Welcome to the Tech Log, your weekly log entry at the intersection of technology and business. Short episodes, real conversations. Let's get underway. Jenny Wen, who is head design at Claude, has shared a few times in the past week that the old design process is dead. The old way to build is dead. And it's interesting to hear what many of us went to school to learn or have spent years and years developing a skill set is considered quote unquote dead. AI lets you experiment instantly now. You don't need a wireframe, no PRD, no mock-up is even needed. Often you don't even have a few people in the same room bouncing ideas off of each other. There's no whiteboard. But you can think of something at 9 p.m. and by 9:15 you have a clicking prototype, and it's a very intoxicating thing. And I think it's also where a lot of us might be potentially making a mistake that we might not notice until a few months or a few weeks into building something. Today, I want to dig into when is it best to just try it out, when to experiment, and when is it best to put a little planning behind something, and why experimenting might be one of the most expensive shortcuts you can take right now. I'm joined with Lisa and Jeff, who both build a lot of really cool things, and they have probably built some not so cool things. And we're going to talk about experimenting and planning a little bit more today. So I'd like to start with the question of what does your build process look like? You have a new idea, something has just popped into your mind, or something has maybe been percolating for a little while. What is the very first thing you do?
For me, it depends what it is. If it's something that I think is a good long-term idea right off the bat, I'm going to spend some more time planning up front. And I will either bounce my idea off some people on the team, I'll bounce my idea off Jeff. I do a lot of brainstorming with ChatGPT. And if it's something that I think I want to spend a long time on, I do start with a PRD and I do start with planning and with a data model and architecting a little bit of what I want that solution to look like. If it's just like, oh, I have a good idea, or a couple weeks ago I was sitting in this AI workshop and the goal was to spin up an app in an hour. Yeah, sure, I'm just gonna work on a prompt, and I still might have ChatGPT help me with the prompt before I put the prompt into whatever my coding agent is, which at the moment I'm using Codex still. That's different than what it was in the beginning, right? When I first got started, I was very much like, I want to build a travel app. I just wanted to build something for fun. And I had some Word documents. I had a process that I wanted to automate. I learned very quickly the first time I did that. I was like, wait, tell me what data model you created, because it feels like you're doing a lot of weird things. And that's when I noticed that I had to give it more context. And I had to do more planning up front.
Mm-hmm. You said you brainstorm with ChatGPT. What does that look like? Are you just having a casual conversation? Is it something more?
Depending on what it is, that might look like, hey, go do deep research and tell me if you think this is a good idea. Could there be a market for this? Would other people be interested in this? Who would be the main competitors? If it's something I'm just building for myself, I might say, hey, I'm thinking about building an app that does this, that, and the other thing. What do you think? Can you draft me a PRD? Here's what I think the data model should be. Is there anything I should keep in mind? Can you, I use ChatGPT to create sample data sometimes to seed a database with, so that I can, when I do spin something up, I already have some data in there and I can play around and see if it's going to work.
Jeff, what does your build process look like right now?
People will say, man, it'd be really cool if I had something that could do this. And then I go online and I look to see if that thing exists. And then if it doesn't, I use Obsidian and keep a lot of notes. And I write, all of the different features and functions and capabilities that this thing would have. And then I'll ask Grok what it thinks about it. Because Grok is usually a little bit less of a sycophant than ChatGPT or Claude, and it'll tell me like, "Oh, that's a terrible idea" or something. Like this is an example. It's not a software thing, but I've been going around for like over a year. I met a professional pickleball player, and I was like, "I've got this great business idea. I want to make pickleballs," and he's like, well, there's, a number of companies already make them. I'm like, no, I want to make pickleballs. And he's like, yeah, they already made. But what I meant was I want round cucumbers that can be pickled. And so then I went and asked, a couple of these LLMs, and it turns out that one of them gave my idea to Vlasic because I just got alerted that Vlasic is now making pickleballs. So thanks, whatever Chat GPT that leaked that, and you're welcome, Vlasic, for my idea. But no, seriously, I try and get information about what the market is, and you can't know everything. And so doing deep research and trying to find what it is that is out there. And I always ask this question. I say, what are the common features and functions that exist in the marketplace? What are the gaps in the market? And what are the common frustrations that people have? And so whether it's a marketing email management system or a CRM or whatever, like I don't think anybody likes software. Like there's always people who complain, but some of those things that people complain about, like you can find real solutions to. And so I take those into account, and then I just shove it all in and say, make this for me on my standard tech stack and see what happens.
I operate a little bit differently because I'm not building software, and I'm also not playing around with building software or apps right now. That's just not my interest. But I come up with a lot of ideas, typically around operations, improvement, sometimes content ideas or content concepts. And I put those all in this like Notion that is like an absolute mess of thoughts that I'm often like talking to Whisper, and then it's dropping it into my Notion pages. And every Thursday at midnight, it runs and ranks those on like what's feasible, what makes sense versus, yeah, you should probably not spend any more brain power on that idea. And that's how some of those ideas have actually made it into production. In a sense, Matt and I are refining our web process a little bit to condense the wireframe. And so some of that comes from, just kind of that like brainstorming on a page and then letting AI sort through my own ideas and letting me know what is probably feasible or what I'd spend way too much time working on and it not have a productive effect or something like that. So about experimenting and planning, it sounds like you both have really utilized planning now in a sense, but you're using AI to plan as well. And so that's really integrated into each part. I've seen the argument come up in the past few weeks that since we're able to build so fast now, there's an argument that planning was maybe always artificial, meaning did we need requirement docs? Have we always needed wireframes? Or did we really rely on those because building was so expensive? The actual development and coding was an expensive resource. Do you find truth in that statement? Do you think because building costs less now, do we need all of this documentation, all of these signed contracts in a sense? Or do you think they're going to stop serving a purpose at a certain point?
So I think in the past, the reason that happened was you usually had the people who wanted something, and then they talked to somebody who could distill that into requirements, and then they handed that off to like a program manager on a software development team, and then they split it up into sprints, and then they built something, and then they went back and they brought it all the way back up to the person. They're like, that's not what I wanted. Whereas now you can get instant feedback on the idea that you had, and you can cut out the middleman or middle people. And so I think that the reason that those processes existed was you never had the same people doing the entire project processes from end to end.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this a number of times that I think everything that's happening with AI now is just speeding up what was happening with humans. So I've always thought that the amount of documents and the amount of planning and design work up front that's being done should be in direct correlation to the number of people working on the project. Since I got started building software and architecting solutions in Salesforce, I never used that kind of stuff in the beginning, right? The first project that I built myself in Salesforce, a 6-person Oracle development team told the company that it was going to take them 6 months to build something. And I had a prototype of that built in 6 hours, and we had launched it within 6 weeks. We were testing it in production essentially within 2 weeks. And then within 6 weeks, we had migrated everything out of the legacy. It was a document control system. And so I think when you're talking about projects and budgets and, trying to find the balance of getting a project done of a high enough quality within a timeline, within a budget, those upfront planning and documentation and requirements docs, it depends on how high stakes or low stakes the outcome is. It depends on the end user's tolerance for some risk and uncertainty. And so I think there are a lot of situations where it's not life or death or business critical. It's a lot of nice to have cool features that people can experiment with now, where they don't need to take the time to worry about doing all that stuff. Now, where it could bite them and where it could hurt, and where I think people need to recognize, is that you might build the wrong thing and start using it. And then the cost is in the time and the sunk cost and the fact that you might need to go back and start over at some point. I've done that 3 or 4 times now, where I built something for myself and then I got sick of it and I realized it was kind of dumb. And then I thought about the time it was going to take me to migrate it to something else. And I'm just going to start over.
Yeah. I also think we're going to see that gap of building the wrong thing lessen, because roles are becoming holistic right now really quickly, meaning your engineers are all of a sudden designing some more. Your end users are engineering. Your product designers are probably doing a little bit of absolutely everything right now, or at least attempting to. And if you have those end users or designers prototyping from the get-go and then taking what they've built and then taking it to the development team or the engineering team or a group like us, they've already constructed what they want. And so they have now built that MVP, and the risk of building the wrong thing in 4 weeks is almost obsolete. And so I think that's an advantage that a lot of businesses or groups aren't taking advantage of. I think some are, but I think the ones that are going to fall behind are not taking advantage of how quickly that loop is closing right now, and how beneficial that can be for those teams. Lisa, you were just talking about a moment where you were building something and then you got tired of it. You thought it was the wrong thing. Jeff, maybe you have some of those moments as well, right? What does that process look like? Is it instantaneous? Do you pull it up again? Are you occasionally looking at old products and going, yeah, this is the wrong, I'm scrapping it, I'm archiving it? Do you bring up your old folder of portfolio of items that you were building and look at occasionally? Or is that just, once it's gone type of concept?
No, I do look at them. And so I have, I don't know, probably in the past 2 years, 50 things that I started on. And I look back at them occasionally. And the last one that I did something with was not on the current tool set and tech stack that I use. And so I just pointed my LLM at it and I said, refactor this and replatform it onto my standard tech stack. And it did that, and it did it pretty quick. And I was super happy with it. And so I started working on it again. Whereas before there was a lot of issues that I ran into. And so I do look back at them. I mean, I'm looking at one that I completely forgot that I started on. And back when I started on it, I was trying to make a game. I was a big fan of way back in the day, there was a game. It was on QBasic and it was called Gorillas. And there was like really bad graphics, and there was these buildings, and then there was 2 gorillas, and then you would tell the one gorilla the angle and the velocity to throw a banana, and it would go like this, and then it would maybe hit the other gorilla or it would hit a building. And then the other person would throw the banana back at you. And so I had tried to actually make one like 2 years ago. So yeah, I'll go back and look at it. I don't ever delete these. I mean, I think I have unlimited space. And so maybe one day I'll get back to my my yacht sharing Airbnb clone. But Yeah, I mean, it's a learning process. And I've literally taken an entire version of something and scrapped it and started over again from scratch, but with the lessons that I learned and the things that I learned about what mistakes I made. And so started out without making those mistakes rather than taking that thing and trying to continually evolve it into what I wanted, because it was just, I felt like a clean slate was better.
When do you know it's time to scrap something and start over?
If I get bored with it, or if I don't know, like if there's something that I just realize is wrong, and typically what that's been lately has been I was building on the wrong technology. Um, and not that it's the wrong technology, it was just the wrong technology for that. A new tool comes along and makes it really, really easy for me to do something in a new way that I wasn't able to do before. And so it makes a lot of sense to pivot and change directions.
The nice thing has been with Jeff building. Jeff has the most amount of tolerance, I think, of everyone on the team, on our team at least, of trying new things, experimenting with new tools. And I think of him as the decision maker of what are the foundational tools that we're including in our tech stack. And he's constantly improving and merging his changes into the foundational tech stack that we're using for the majority of the solutions and products that we're building, whether they're ones that we're planning on selling or ones that we're just using internally, or even like I've been rebuilding my own personal website on a similar tech stack, and the amount of times I've had to start over has been greatly reduced by the fact that Jeff's continuously upgrading that tech stack and pushing changes to that tech stack that then I can pull down into the things that I'm building. And so it's almost like there's a platform now that's being upgraded that I'm able to incorporate my changes into, and I spend less time upfront too saying this is the tech stack, or this is the data model, or this is the foundation of what I want this to look like. I can just say, here's the 64 pages now, the prompt of what the tech stack is. Here's what I want to build on top of it. Here's what I want it to do. I don't think I've started over on anything in the last 6 months, unless it was something that I started on, 2 years ago and then just picked back up. I just deleted my replit and everything was in there. I just basically deleted it because I can rebuild it now using that tech stack.
I want to talk a little bit deeper, as I feel most AI conversations get right now, about the importance of thinking, the importance of maybe those traditional design steps that I think Jenny was talking about. She's the example we opened with, where she shared that the traditional design process, the traditional build process is dead. That would have been brainstorming some ideas on a whiteboard, wireframing, going back and talking some more, maybe building a prototype, going back, right? And these cycles that a lot of us have been doing second nature for years now. And now you can skip all of that, immediately go to Claude, Replit, your own agent, whatever you're building on, and you can outsource a bit of that thinking step. Do you think iterating on a working prototype and replacing that thinking step is harmful? Do you think it doesn't really matter? Have you put any thought into that process yet?
I don't think it's harmful, and I also think that the main thing is, if you keep going and never show it to anybody else, you're going to keep on developing, and you're like, I got to get it perfect. Oh, here's another feature. Here's another function. Oh, here's another thing I could do. And so, I forget what the actual quote is, but in the military, they said, you have your best plan until you get punched in the face, or contact with the enemy. And I think it's, how to use something and how it works and you've been building it. And then when other people use it, either they don't like it, they don't know how to use it, they are confused, or they have really good ideas that you hadn't thought of. And so, and especially now that we're like a lot of us are remote workers, you don't have as much of that bumping into somebody in the break room to be able to bounce the ideas off of. So I think that the sooner you get things in front of people, the better it is. and the more diverse groups of people that you could show it to really makes a difference. But otherwise, I don't think it's harmful.
I just think of it as very quick, agile sprints almost, right? Like I'll play with it a little bit. I'll come up with 3 or 4 different things that I think need to be fixed. I'll write those down. We'll prioritize them. Codex and I will prioritize them, and then I'll say, okay, go work on those. And then, I'm working on something else. And that's not to say that I'm not doing any upfront planning though, right? Sometimes I'll have an idea for something that's very abstract and I don't know what I want it to look like or what I want it to do, but I have a general idea of like, I want something that does this. And what I would like to do, ChatGPT, is I would like to talk to you whenever I think I would use this thing. And as I'm talking to you, I'm going to give you the requirements as I'm in the middle of whatever it is. And to me, that's like a different new way of like this slow, leisurely approach to designing something where I've had an idea for something for going on 3 months now. And whenever it occurs to me, I open up one project in ChatGPT and I take some time to talk through, here's where I think I would use this app or this solution in my life today. And here's what I would like to do with it. And here's an idea of how I would like to interact with it and what I would like to look like. Can you just hang on to this information, right? And that's all in one project folder of chats in ChatGPT. So whenever I feel like it, it's usually on a weekend or when I'm doing, it's something for fun. It's not work related. It's more of like a personal, like household management type of a thing, but I want it to be aesthetically pleasing and fun and cool. And so I only work on that when I'm feeling inspired. And I haven't built anything related to that yet. I've just been planning for 6 months, right? I have 6 months worth of chat history now about that. And so eventually, hopefully I'll turn that into something, but not until that. I think would be harmful for me to create a prototype because I still don't really know what I want that prototype to even do.
Do you find that what you've started with in a prompt is often very different than the end product that you're about to ship?
When I give Codex a prompt to build something at this point, I've probably already worked on that prompt for a minimum of 30 to 60 minutes, maybe a week or two. And remember, that prompt also includes 64 pages and counting of here's the foundational stack. So I think in the beginning, yes, that was the case. Because it's like we've talked about on this podcast before now, lack of context and lack of detail is going to cause hallucinations. So if you don't give it enough information, you're going to end up with buttons and graphics and all kinds of things that don't serve a purpose. But if you ask Codex or ask Replit or ask whatever agent you want to build an app, it knows that apps have screens and buttons and menus and whatever. And so if you don't clarify what you want, it's just going to give you random placeholder stuff. And then, you're going to spend some amount of time getting rid of all that and replacing it with what you want. Or that's where you're going to get backed into like a UI that wasn't really what you thought of. But, so my prompts at this point, it's not just hey, I want to build an app that does da, da, da. That's not, if I say that to ChatGPT and I'm like, here's my tech stack doc, like, here's this, here's that, like, can you help me work on my prompts? My goal is a prototype, or my goal is like a working MVP that I can show to my team. What's the outcome that I want? Do I want a working MVP? Do I already know that this is something that I want to deploy to production and have users? If I don't know, like, I can say, like, I want you to build this in less than 3 hours. Like, you don't need to, don't be coding this all night. It just depends on what I want the outcome to be. So I can't even explain to you what a prompt is right now because lately, every time I start something new, I think the prompt itself has taken me at least 30 to 60 minutes, which is a decent amount of time for a prompt, right? So like the planning is compressed, but it's not missing.
That's a really good point. Planning is condensed, but not missing. There is a concept called reactive cognition and getting in front of a prototype too quickly right now, right? You're just reacting to it and your brain is processing it in a way where you're more so asking, did this match what I mean versus what do I actually mean? And that's in the sense of a prompt, meaning if you have prompted something to be built and you immediately see something, there's a visual in front of you, you are asking yourself, does this match what I mean versus what did I mean? And I think it's the beauty of asking that question. What do you actually mean? What are you actually building? What's the concept? And that's why I was asking if the prompts you normally start with are very close to your end product, or do you end up, completely off in left field with something that still might be absolutely amazing and useful, but completely different?
The people that are on the internet saying this, I think they're just trying to get a rise out of people. Software development has been iterative since the beginning of software development. I don't care if you're going to AI or you're going to a 100-person team of engineers, you're not getting exactly what you asked for the first time you asked for it.
Sure.
I mean, I can't think of any project I've ever worked on, even if I built it myself, where, I said, this is what I'm going to build. And then I went and sat down for 3 hours and I built however much I could build in 3 hours. It doesn't matter. Even while I'm building it, I'm in the middle of building it. I'm like, oh, you know what else I could do? You know what else I could do? I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. And then at the end, maybe it's great. Maybe it's not great. Maybe I decided to leave some stuff out because I was constrained by time or energy or brain power or skills. I just, that's a tough question for me to ask. And again, I have the bias of someone that's worked in this technology industry for a long time. And so, I'm grateful for the fact that I grew up during a time that I had to write with a pen and a pencil and learn how to write in cursive and then learn how to, do all these things by hand and do all these things without AI. So I can't speak for someone who has never designed an application and then is trying to do it using AI. I'm sure there's many people that are going to be successful doing that. I think there are many people that are going to have to learn a lot of things either by trial and error or going and researching or shadowing or learning from, people who have done it before.
Mm-hmm. When I think that's why probably both you and Jeff are really good at not being reactive to just what you're seeing, right? Because you have a skill set and a construct behind your typing of what it can be, what it needs to do, or what needs to change. And I think for somebody who does not have the skill set that you both have, somebody who has no software development, they prompt something and within a few minutes they see something. And then instead of taking that moment to go, is that actually what I meant? They're now becoming very reactive because they see something that looks good enough on their screen, but that maybe actually wasn't what they were trying to go for, but they're just excited or, happy that something is built in front of them. And then they start kind of going immediately down that path that wasn't quite the right path. So I think that is an interesting concept of this reactive response because something is built in front of you. We had a situation like this with a client just a few weeks ago. We had put a prototype of a website in front of the client and it was going really well and they were really happy. And then we get to the second, maybe third design review. And what was like the third thing out of her mouth? Wait, I don't think this is right. This doesn't feel like me. And we immediately stopped sharing screen. We broke out pen and paper and we just sat down and reversed back for a moment. Okay, what is you? What feels like your business? What are you going for? Who are you trying to reach? Who is your audience? What do they feel? What do they want to experience when they get on your website? We had to go back to square one for a few moments before we could show her another prototype because I think that reactive response was happening. It looked good. It had looked better than something she could have built. And I think that highlights something a lot of folks who are using AI to build things right now, but they don't have a skill set to fall back on. I think that's highlighting something that they're going through. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that happens across the board with a lot of different places in life, in society these days too. I mean, I think human beings need to keep their wits about them. You should be able to say, yes, I like this, or no, I don't like this, and this is why. And if you aren't able to do that, what you might need is either more feedback from external resources or more experience. Because even if you haven't built software, I would hope that you've used software before you're going to start building software. if you came to me and you said, I'm going to start a restaurant, and I said, okay, do you know how to cook? And you said, no. I'd say, okay, well, do you go to a lot of restaurants? And you said, yes. And I'd be like, that's good. I think if you go to 100 restaurants and then you want to learn how to cook and open a restaurant, I would say that by going to and sitting in 100 restaurants, you have, a baseline amount of experience of what goes on in there. But if you told me, no, I don't cook and I don't go out to eat, and I've never worked in a restaurant, and I've never been in a restaurant, or I've only been in 2 restaurants, right? Then I would say, well, you probably need to go eat at a whole bunch of restaurants or work at a couple of restaurants, or, right? So like if all you've ever used is Instagram and TikTok, but you want to build a business application, but you've never worked in a business that's utilizing a business application like that one, then I think that's where you're going to run into a problem.
If you could go back and maybe back 2 years and tell yourself one thing about balancing instant building, experimentation with some of that foundational, traditional build work or design work, maybe not even as a developer or a systems architect, but as somebody who owns a business, as an entrepreneur, how do you decide what's worth building? When should you just build, and when should you take a step back and plan a little bit?
I still don't know what I would tell myself. I feel like I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still, maybe in another 6 to 12 months, I'll have some lessons learned, but right now I'm still in the middle of it. I have no regrets. I feel just, I feel excited and overwhelmed at the same time, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody else. I think Jeff just feels excited.
I don't have that much advice. I mean, 2 years ago, I was really when I started like digging deep into how to get more efficient and productive using AI tools and how I could expand my capabilities with it. I'd say maybe some of the advice would be don't use Cursor. I'm sure it's a great product now, and it was a great product then. I just spent a lot of money on tokens and turns trying to get it to do what I wanted to do.
I will say if I could go back further, if I go back like 10 or 15 years and give myself advice, I would say keep working on all these ideas in the background, because at some point you're going to be able to execute on them by yourself without having to pay like a bunch of people a whole bunch of money to do it. I think there were a lot of things I was excited about 15 years ago that I could have kept planning and doing some stuff in the background. Now I still have a lot of lists and notes and things that are kind of scattered and disorganized because I never thought I'd be able to take action on those things. If I go back 15 years, I would say in the year 2025, you're going to be able to develop applications by yourself as though you had an entire software development team behind you.
I think what I have to tell myself often, you don't have to wait for a plan. I'm a planner. And so I like to have a plan, a set of instructions in front of me. But I think what Jeff was saying is you just have to start playing with it and experimenting with it. And you can have 2 of those happening at the same time, right? There is a sense of planning within the experimenting, but everyone is almost at the same playing field right now of something is happening quickly. The tools are changing quickly. Things emerge every week. There's new things out there, right? I think I've got something figured out, and then, a new model drops and it's all different. I'm changing everything all over again. So you don't have to wait for a plan because there is no plan for it right now. You just have to start experimenting. Whether you're scrapping a bunch of ideas or not, you're going to get closer to your end goal, whatever that end goal might be.
Yeah, and I think the more that you experiment and the more you play around with it, you're going to refine the way that you interact with AI tools. You're going to refine the way that you design something, whether it's a process or content or software, whatever it is that you're using AI to help you with. And when everyone has access to accomplish the same types of tasks, the way that you personally approach it and execute on it is going to be the only thing that sets you apart. And you're not going to develop your own personal style of doing that unless you're experimenting and trying it out and not just like following the pack and doing what everyone else is doing.
Thank you both, Jeff and Lisa, for talking today about experimenting versus planning. Here at Port and Starboard, if you want to learn a little bit more about what we do or how we can help your business, you can find out more information in the show notes. Thank you so much. We love to talk technology and business. Learn more about Port and Starboard or connect with us in the show notes. Fair winds until next time.